So I saw this documentary way back in middle school, and it showed this kind of pocket of poverty in America of people living a pretty backwards way of life with no education, no health care, no teeth, and all they really knew was life in the mines and not much outside of that. So I'm not exactly sure what I was expecting, but I think the trip definitely changed my view.
Hearing from our community partners about Pulaski being kind of known as a rural community, it was kind of interesting to hear a bit more about the history about Pulaski, that it actually was Pulaski City and it was just this booming industrial town for a while.
So our first day in Pulaski, we went on an economic tour of the town, and we got to take a really close look at the surrounding neighborhoods. Many of them honestly weren't that great. A tornado had recently come through, and many of the people weren't able to afford housing repairs. They tried to go to FEMA, and they honestly didn't give them enough support. So many of the houses were run down, missing windows, the roofs were damaged. So neighborhoods weren't looking too great.
This woman comes out and she only has one bag, and I didn't think she was coming to us, but she actually came to us with just this one bag. And it reminded me of this story in the Bible where Jesus witnesses this other widow come up to an offering plate with just 2 pennies, and Jesus says that this woman gives her all to whatever she believes in.
So during the food drive, it was kind of hard going up to people thinking, oh, what if their kids are on free or reduced lunch? But this one lady that really impacted me came out with like 5 or 6 bags of food and said to us that she had grown up in Radford and gone to the Radford schools and was on free lunch all the way through high school. And thanks to that, she had survived and now was no longer in poverty and was really happy to give back to the other kids in her community.
All right, so I didn't really know what to expect coming in. I had never tutored before. I had never worked in an impoverished rural community before. So I was pretty unsure of how things were going to be at Belle Heath. And when we first met the program director, she said something that kind of caught me off guard. She described one of the students as a bad kid. And that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I've never heard a teacher or someone who works in education describe someone as a bad kid, and I thought, how is this kid going to succeed if this program director who's leading the program to give him opportunities to succeed doesn't believe in him?
I was kind of surprised, there's a mix of kids. There's everyone from Tim, who kind of seems like your typical, normal suburban kid, to Tiffany, who had a very thick accent and kind of had, tendencies that kind of made me think that she was stereotypically more rural, to even kids like Tarek, who he and his sister were both from Egypt. It was kind of interesting to see that you kind of had this blend of like these three really different blends of kids in one classroom.
One of the things I noticed about the kids in Pulaski were that they were just as motivated as students here at Georgetown. When I sat with them one-on-one to learn about math and teach them about writing, they were enthusiastic and they really wanted to learn. I could just tell in their faces. The school really focused on gadgets with computers and smart boards, but not really on the teachers. The student-to-teacher ratio was really high, and the teachers didn't seem to have as much experience working with the kids. Most of them were younger. So the quality of the teachers wasn't at the same level as what I've experienced personally.
During our 4 days at Belle Heath Elementary School, I had the privilege of working in Ms. Hong's 4th grade classroom. And from the outset, it was evident that Ms. Hong was an extraordinary educator. For one, she always treated her students with the utmost respect, as if she was talking to another adult. And whenever one of her students struggled with a concept, she would always try her best to tutor that student until he or she grasped that concept. And it was also clear that Ms. Hong would buy classroom supplies with her own money.
So I kind of imagined that these Appalachian towns would be pretty isolated, and they'd be generational towns where people grew up, their parents are from there, and then maybe a lucky few get away and escape and move away. But what surprised me was at one of the churches, I ended up talking to a bunch of people who had moved from Long Island, Staten Island, New Jersey, and they all talked about how actually Pulaski was their escape, and they really preferred the nicer people and the simple way of life compared to the craziness of New York.
All right, I guess when we were learning about the town, we would learn about the rise and fall of the coal industry, the rise and fall of the furniture industry, and now more recently there's a minor league baseball team coming in, and there's a Volvo plant that recently opened and has been supplying a lot of jobs for the community. And my impression of that, my takeaway, is that this is just a very resilient town that has dealt with a lot of adversity and continues to